Hello, everyone, and welcome to a bonus pod here for you on Anfield Index Pro. As another thrilling international break winds to a close, I'm Harry Sethi. Tonight's pod was inspired actually by a discussion between myself and our two guests following Red's third consecutive defeat against Chelsea a few weeks back. A discussion that centered around the gap between our expectations of Liverpool Football Club's personnel and what we'd seen so far this season. So not just individual performances, but also, what they've seemingly been instructed to do by Arne. So on this pod, we thought we'd work our way through the current first team squad to give our thoughts on, how we thought that expected each player to fit and what we've seen so far. 7 games into the Premier League season. And joining me tonight to comb through the squad with a fine-tooth comb. Happy to welcome on the familiar dulcet tones of Trev, Downey and Lewis Aspinall.
Hey.
Evening, fellas. Should probably set the context in terms of, Liverpool doing well. I think there's been a lot of hysteria during the international break around just how big or mini this crisis may be. For all that we may have misgivings about how Liverpool are currently playing and the clarity of what we've seen, I think we should be obviously framing it in the context of where Liverpool currently are in the league and also how early on into the season we're at. So that's my kind of context setting. But as I said, we're going to be going through the squad player by player, just to sort of get your view on expectations versus reality, the gap that seems to enrage most people these days. And so let's start, if you're good to go, with the goalkeepers. And Trev, I'll come to you first, and we'll go around the group this way. But I think it's fair to say this is probably going to be one of the smaller discussions that we have in the squad. Mamardashvili and Alisson Becker, what we thought they'd be doing, as opposed to what they're actually doing, I think is pretty similar. How about you? Your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you were to pick one area of the team where we're pretty well stocked, and even with the fella out on loan and some of the up and comers, I think goalkeeping's probably one of our best situations. And the lads who have been in between the posts for us in matches have done good things. So I don't think anyone can lay any blame at the feet of our goalkeeper or goalkeepers. It is interesting, though, for anyone watching this in video, like when this started, this run of 3 games, I had the same dark beard as the 3 of you. And now you can observe the white Santa Claus tones that have come into the side of mine. It has been a very uncomfortable period, Harry. And I understand your contextualization of it as in, like, we were getting wins and all that. But if you did want to go uber Hendrick and be a little bit pessimistic about the whole thing, you could say that the not tremendous form stretches back a bit further. So is it a little bit more of a sort of systemic issue than we want to account for? And I think as we get into the other positions, that'll probably start to take a little bit of hold as the discussion goes on. But yeah, it would be harsh, I think, to say anything too critical about our goalkeepers.
No, for sure. And Lewis, I'm guessing you're going to echo those thoughts really right around up until and even including the kind of 6-week absence that Ali seems to have every season now. This is pretty much in line with what we expect. I mean, I think for the opening weeks of the season, Alisson was incredible and in many games. And we'll talk about some of the defensive shortcomings that meant he had to be so good. But I think the goalkeepers is going to be a quick discussion for us, right?
Yeah, I think considering the amount of shots that we're actually conceding at the moment compared to, like you said, like Trev said last season, this tactical systemic approach where we completely look vulnerable defensively. Alisson's bailed us out on multiple occasions. Like that Crystal Palace match in particular, we should have been 3-4-5 down first half. And he kept us in that match right up until we weren't in that match anymore. And there's not much you can say about them. Like you said, goalkeepers nowadays are expected to play with the ball at their feet. They're supposed to be creative players. Alisson's been doing that in his role while also being a great shot stopper. And Mamardashvili, when he's come in, he's not done too much wrong. I think there's not really much else you can ask of them than putting in solid performances. And if you were to go through this season at the start and rank each individual player as we're doing, of course, the goalkeepers at the moment, Alisson in particular, bar that injury, be the top 3, 4, 5, maybe. Like, he's been one of the better players for us, but that's purely because he's got one job and he does that job well. So no complaints from my perspective and Alisson, really, to be honest.
Yeah, and I thought it was actually quite refreshing that even after he got injured, Mamardashvili comes in, and there's a little bit of panic about it online, but you go, no, that's what we signed this guy for. We're aware that Alisson is eventually going to transition out of the team. His injury record doesn't appear to be improving season on season. So despite his heroics, that's the sell that was made to Mamardashvili, and he's already sort of coming in and will play quite a focal role over the next coming weeks or so. So let's move on to the centre backs. I think we'll start to have more of a discussion. Again, let's probably keep it to a shorter discussion before we really get into the sort of the weeds of things. Virgil van Dijk, Lewis, based upon what you expect Virgil van Dijk to be doing and how you expected him to be contributing to the side this season and what he's shown so far, what's your view?
Oh, I mean, given the fact that everyone else around him has been playing the manner of which they have been, who, I can't wait to hear Trev's thoughts on a certain French partner for him at the back, but I think he's been doing as good a job as you'd expect. That Chelsea game, yeah, fair enough. No one particularly came away with that with their heads held high, but like the Atletico Madrid game earlier in the season, you go to the Arsenal match, you go to the Newcastle game, Van Dijk has been putting in colossal performances at points, but even when he's not been playing great, he's still at a standard that most other centre-backs look at and think, God, he's incredible. That's just how great of a player he's been for us. Has it been the top quality Van Dijk that we expect? Maybe not at points, but like I said, when you've got two full-backs who are integrating into this squad, when you've got a centre-back partner who is not pulling his weight, and Van Dijk at times has carried that back line, at times has dragged this squad through the mud, not even just this season, but last season as a whole as well at times. I think he's stepped up as well as you'd expect them to. I understand why people maybe mock him because of that, that stupid meme of him dancing, running away from the attack or whatever. He's made a career of defending the way in which he does, and the way he does it is second to none in certain areas. Am I a little bit worried about maybe, we've got a couple of years left and we still haven't sort of addressed who's next in line for when Van Dijk does inevitably go? Yes, but I think that the level he's performing at the moment, the standard of which he's setting, he's still such an integral part to this team that I think you could maybe keep him there for those 2 years and then find a way of addressing it. But he's one of the first names on the team sheet for a reason, mate. Same for the season, even if we've been poor as a whole. Yeah,
and I think it also probably not his on the pitch performances and sort of how he stepped up and held things together at times, but I think as well, we shouldn't underestimate the role that he's playing as captain of this side, and again, we mentioned the context of sort of where the team is, but the context of what the team's going through as well off the pitch, and into sort of a group of guys who've lost a friend as well. Managing the group through this, I think, is obviously going to be something that we're going to see him do, for the rest of his Liverpool career. But he seems to be sort of doing everything you'd hope and expect in that regard as well. I mean, Trev, I'm going to go to you with Virgil and then move on quickly to, I think, someone who you probably spend a bit longer talking about. But Virgil van Dijk, he seems to get that this is a serious business, whilst others around him perhaps have not yet sort of gotten onto that.
I think it's fair to say that Virgil, Ali, and Dom have been our performers this season on a consistent basis, and that I don't think you can really argue with that. And he is the yardstick that everyone measures other defenders by, unless you feel that you happen to be Sol Campbell. Can I share something with you here? Have a look at this. I need you to see this. So here is an article from Sol Campbell, and it is on the very wonderful Spurs web. It says Sol Campbell says Tottenham defender is better than Virgil van Dijk. You're going down through it and you're going, Christ alive, who's the Tottenham lad? Is it Mickey van de Ven? It is Mickey van de Ven. And let's just go down to the actual quote from Sol. Sorry, I'm trying to find it here, not drive you mental with the thing. He does say, oh yeah, Campbell told Give Me Sport on TikTok. Current, I would say number 1 and 2, Saliba is in there, and Gabriel is 2, and number 3 is Van de Ven. Now, I'm sorry, but this is the type of thing that, if you're being really honest, this is the type of thing that it's put out there deliberately for whatever sort of clickbait nonsense. I know I've fallen right into it, but the reason I bring it up is I think it's really important that we push back as Liverpool fans and say, shut up. He is the best in the world. He has been for quite some time. Please stop talking absolute bobbins about the best defender you've ever seen. And for a little bit of balance, I saw some quotes from no less than Nesta recently talking about how he is the best at what he does. And I think he might have a better idea somehow than Sol Campbell, who, good player and all as he was, doesn't seem to be the best set of lads. On Ibou Konate, I don't like to do this type of basic thing, but he does strike me as a lad who's had his head turned, or at least, best case scenario, is not fully dialed in. I don't think he could argue with that because some of his sloppiness has been, I think, scandalous for a fella of his talent, for a fella of his potential. And I feel like we're still talking about potential with Ibou Konate. He could be, etc., etc. When Joe Gomez was at his very peak playing alongside Virgil in that title-winning charge back in 2020, there was no could be about it. Some weeks you were saying, you know what? Gomez was better than Van Dijk that day. And that's saying something. Occasionally, Konate will have a game like that, but then the next game he won't be like that. And much and all as I love him, and I think there is incredible ability and talent there, I would rather someone who's dialed in at 7 out of 10 every game than occasional 9s and occasional 2s. That's where I am on it. Maybe that's a bit harsh. I don't know.
Yeah, I think actually one thing that I'd like to see more from Konate, and it goes to this focus, this intensity, and the consistency. You know, we often talked in glowing terms, Trev, about one Joel Matip, and I think perhaps Joel Matip is not someone who I think as time has gone by, people I think have seemingly kind of underestimated how good he was when he could reach his top level. But what I'm actually talking about with Joel Matip is I want to see Ibou Konate throw in a tantrum like we used to see from Joel Matip. I want to see that level of frustration at a defensive error, or I want to see him celebrating a tackle like Kimmich does it like 20 times a game to an annoying sort of level. I want to see that it, just how important it is to him that Liverpool keep a clean sheet. And I haven't seen that this season. There's been sloppiness, as you've mentioned. The talent's clearly there. I think he's no doubt suffering from some of the things we'll come to talk about in the change on the right back position, because I think he's probably been used to giving the ball to somebody at right back who can then supply the creativity from that position. And now the burden's been placed onto him, and he's not necessarily living up to the sort of the vacuum there. But I mean, Lewis, that's probably a good segue to come onto the right back position, because it does feel connected. You can feel free to talk about Ibou as well. But we've seen Conor Bradley there, we've seen Jeremy Frimpong there, we've seen Dominic Szoboszlai there as well. Start with Ibou, but then let's shift on to the right back position and maybe how those things are affect one another.
Well, this is the thing. People are trying to make the defense of, Konate's getting exposed because Frimpong likes to venture forward and attack. And it's like, he's just been with Trent for like 3-4 years. So that can't be used as a justification for why he's been poor defensively, because he's having to cover space. He did that multiple times last season. And like Trev said before, there's points where you look at certain defenders and think, you're comparable to Van Dijk. You've had a better game. I would say up until that Real Madrid game last season, Konate was our best centre-back. I thought he was brilliant, and he was covering for that space. He's doing the exact same role, but he's just not putting in the effort or putting in the shift like you see Van Dijk doing. Yeah. And it's concerning. And for that right back, whoever that is, the reason Trent was able to thrive going forward so much is A, because he was brilliantly technical on the ball, but B, it was also because you knew whoever was there behind you would cover the space, be it a Wijnaldum, be it a Henderson, be it a Konate, whoever was there would cover that gap. If you're Jeremy Frimpong now, you're venturing forward trying to create things. There's no defensive structure there for you to rely on. So you're constantly having to track back as quick as you can, throwing yourself around. And I think that's something that Frimpong, For the first few games of this season, I thought he looked good in the Community Shield. I thought he looked brilliant against Atletico Madrid at points. I thought he looked good, decent in his first games back, but he's dipped majorly. And I think the idea of Slot having Frimpong and Szoboszlai as two options, and he trusts the midfielder that's a makeshift right back ahead of the player that we've signed to be a right back, or Connor Bradley, who is a right back, tells you a lot about where he stands in the pecking order currently. And I think that there's a skill set in Frimpong. He's decent going forward. He likes the overlap. He's got recovery pace that like no one can compete with. It's just his creativity on the ball. It makes you realize how much Trent was out of this world, how he was so unlike any other fullback we've got, because there's a difference between picking up the ball and running with it, like we see Frimpong do with no end product, in particular that Galatasaray match, and Trent, who maybe wasn't as mobile as we wanted, but he had a creative spark that no one else had. So there is concerns in the right back area, and Connor Bradley is as such is. Look, I like Bradley. I do think there's a real player in there. Defensively, he's sound. He's great going forward. I don't think he gets the credit for that. But he doesn't look like he's come back from his latest injury anywhere near his proper fitness. He looks downbeat. Against Atletico, against Everton, he got ran all over the pitch. He lost a lot of battles. Like, I just think there is a clear struggle from him to integrate himself back into this system. And I don't know if it's tactics. I don't know if it's the personnel around him. I don't know what it is, but I'm hoping he can turn things around, because I don't think Slot's going to look at this and think, can we last with these two as our right back options when I'm having to play a midfielder there to compensate for their deficiencies at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's a few interesting things that come to mind when you sort of speak around sort of Frimpong and Bradley. And I know I saw sort of Bradley getting rave reviews for a performance in the international break that he put in the other night. But what I saw from it as well, and I felt bad almost responding to, like Bradley shines in this international match, but I saw that he picked up a yellow card again, and that he was suspended from the match against Germany as a result. And it feels a bit churlish to say it, but that's one thing that for me, that's been the most disappointing thing I've seen from him this season. Yes, he might not be fit, but there's a rashness in his game, a naivety in his game that, most wingers in this league will take advantage of that. If they know they can suck you in, get a cheap yellow card for you early on.
Everton did it. Everton did it last season, or was it this season, where they coaxed him into getting that early yellow, and then he was on eggshells for most of the match? Absolutely,
yeah. So I think there's those questions, and I suppose, Trev, let's leave Dom for a while here, because I think we'll come on to Dom when we speak about the midfield. But if we think about Bradley and we think about Frimpong, and we think about actually what do we think Slot actually wants from his right back this season? Because we can all acknowledge that he was never going to go and find a Trent Alexander-Arnold out there. Those are not the players that we've pursued. That's not the player that Connor Bradley is. It's not the player that Jeremy Frimpong is. If Kyle Walker can make a career in the Premier League based upon recovery speed and the ability to go forward and sort of cover that, right? You can imagine that Frimpong can probably make a decent career in the Premier League. He's not as physically strong as Kyle Walker, albeit, but there's so much of the defensive lapses that we saw from him were bailed out by his extraordinary pace. But I want to ask you, kind of, what, based on what we've seen, the right back is not being asked to do what Trent was doing last season. It seems to be kind of a halfway house.
Yeah, there's it's kind of bigger, and it's linked to the far side of the pitch as well, in my opinion, because we're looking at a guy who we signed who was a flyer over on the left wing, getting up and down in a more traditional left back sense, hooking over crosses, pulling things back, being quite swashbuckling. Now he's tucked in as a third centre half. I'm still traumatized. I think I said it to you on Raw. By the last time I saw him, he was drifting across in the midfield a la Trent, except he went further to the right-hand side and there was literally no point to it. Because we know once the ball goes into that zone, everybody's going to kick it immediately to Florian Wirtz. We'll get there later. But for now, in terms of the right-back stuff, I don't know. What does Arne want? Does Arne know what Arne wants? Because I don't understand what the plan is this season. I can't see it. I don't think I'm stupid. I like to be able to look at a game and see what the shape is, at least. I can't see it. There are a lot of things happening that are counterbalancing, counteracting other things in a bad way, I think. So the flow isn't there for us to be able to see. It's one of the fullbacks. We were told famously he liked to have a defensive fullback and an attacking fullback. Well, okay, let's do that. And I'm going to throw it back to the two of you because I was really interested to hear Lou's analysis and your analysis on Bradley, because I wanted to push this on a show with Dave Davis there recently to its logical conclusion, and that is, what do we do here? I think we have to stick, not twist anymore. And if it's going to be Dom Szoboszlai, I think we could be screwed in midfield. That's what I mean by knock-on effects, because we've got two other lads who aren't at their best. So if we release him back to midfield theoretically for a second, which is the way you were setting this up, Harry, who do we go with at right back? And for me, the confidence is not there, as you boys both, I think, really, really accurately pointed out in the Northern Irishman. I think you go with Frimpong. I think you accept that there's going to be defensive shortcomings. You tell Konate, hey, dial in and watch this guy's six. And we're right back to where we were last year with Trent, except it's different. We've got a carrier of the ball rather than a progressor of the ball through passing. And it makes it simpler. So I'd bounce it right back to you two guys and say, what would you think individually is the solution? Which of the guys is the solution?
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Trev, actually, around Frimpong in that you give him the position and you say to him, that we don't want to alter the game that, sort of was the reason why you have the profile you have and the reason why you were signed. You are lightning quick. And actually, the thing I enjoyed about the Galatasaray match and the Atletico match was we were actually using him in that way. There's been lots of responsibility on Virgil this season to provide the creativity from the back, the switches that traditionally went to Mo. They don't have to go to Mo now. They can go to Frimpong as well, because he can get there and he can give us that natural width. And then maybe Salah comes a bit more into closer to the action. And the one difference I would say, Trevor, around sort of the job that Konate has is you can say to Konate, hey, you are covering this space. Yeah, Frimpong's job is to go forward and to try and help the attack out. But, I think we can all say here, unlike like we saw from Trent last season, I would expect Frimpong to be busting a gut to get back if he can, because that's the kind of, sort of electric pace that we know he has. So
we have seen it. We actually have seen it in games. We've seen that recovery pace. It's great. It's lovely to see, actually.
Yeah.
So it's not directly, like sort of the situation that Konate is going to be left on an island, things like that. But yeah, I would give it to Frimpong at the moment, and just accept, like you said, that there are going to be some shortcomings, but that we play to his strength and try and get more out of him in that sense. But I mean, Lewis, what do you think?
No, I agree. I think you don't sign someone like Frimpong, invincible title-winning season. We knew what type of player he was when we signed him. Do you know what I mean? This isn't like he's come in and people expected a defensive genius and then he's been playing the way he is and everyone's like, oh, why? Everyone knew what type of style of player he was when he came in. And I think you're absolutely right. Another thing that's not helping him, and I know we'll get to the midfield shortly, but you look at Liverpool last season, McAllister was never present. Gravenberch was never present almost. Like, one of them would often drift out wide and cover that space. And then you'd have your attackers coming deep. Jota would come deep. Nunez would come deep. Everyone filled in different gaps for each other. This season, it just feels like when Frimpong goes forward, because he is one of the best, like, progressive carriers of the ball in Europe. I think he's in the top 2% for fullbacks in that metric. There's no one covering that space in behind him. And the fact that he's venturing forward as much as he is, further up the pitch than Trent did, but Salah still isn't, he's having the season he is. It doesn't feel like he's got an outlet at times because he's like doubled up on. Just shows how ineffective the runs from Frimpong have been so far. He's not overlapping effectively. When he does go inverted, the ball always seems to find its way back to the midfielders and it's wasted effort and energy. And then he's tracking back. And like Trev said before, it just feels like Slot's being very reactive, not proactive. It's sort of like, okay, a fire comes up, I'll do something to deal with it. And when Frimpong's venturing forward and there's that massive gap in between, rather than saying to one of your midfielders, right, tuck it in, like drop wide, or telling Konate, look for that space and cover it, it's get forward, try and make something happen. When it doesn't happen, crap, we're going to have to track back and defend it. So you've got to stick with him because there is clearly a skill set there that can benefit the likes of Salah and others. But without the correct support around him, like he had at Leverkusen, for example, where a lot of the system was based around the way he wanted to play, you are not going to see the best out of him. So while he's not performed to the top level, there are others around him who also need to pull their weight to allow him the creative freedom that he thrives off of.
Yeah, no, completely agreed. I think also one thing that came to my mind as you were speaking there as well is that, who knows, maybe the plan was to start with Frimpong, as we saw at the start of the season, and to stick with Frimpong, but that injury, the first in his career, happens after the Community Shield, which is obviously a delight, especially for a fast twitch kind of right back like that. And perhaps that that obviously led to more caution, led to the switching of players who, let's face it, Bradley coming in not fit, Dom playing there, looking good because he's Dom, and we'll come to Dom. But let's flip over to the other side of the defense for a second and talk about the left back position, because I think it's a position that coming into the season, we saw Milos Kerkez signed after a really impressive couple of seasons at Bournemouth, a flying winger, decent on the ball, but really sort of what we saw the best of him of was charging on down the wing, swinging crosses in for the likes of Semenyo, the likes of Bournemouth, other attackers to take advantage of. Tenacious in his defensive approach, maybe not the best defender in the world, but we saw similar from Robbo early on in his career, right? You have tenacity, aggression, and that can make up for some of the shortcomings. We expected him to have the starting shirt there probably, and Robbo to dovetail as that experienced older head in certain games. Trev, what have you made of the way in which that position has been occupied? I mean, there's been lots of changes back and forth. I mean, there's been high-profile substitutions of Kerkez in certain games. I think to his credit, he's come back and actually rebounded after a couple of those games. But it's been a lot of change between himself and Robbo. And you get the impression that the player is suffering from a crisis of confidence, and the manager doesn't appear to perhaps using him as we expected.
I don't think he's helping the kid. And again, this is not like, I think people know when they're listening to the three of us and this channel in general that we're not reactionary, banging the table, saying anyone out, but we have to be honest, and it doesn't seem like it's helping the kid the way things are at the moment. I just don't see any that it helps. So for me, much to my missus' frustration, I am a solutions-oriented person. So I just don't want to talk about how I feel about these things. I want to say that for me, you stick with this kid. You allow him to play more of his natural game. For me, you stick with the other kid that we signed on the other side. You allow him to play his natural game as much as possible. And we see how that goes. But what we've been doing is sticking the Robbo Band-Aid on occasions. We've been saying, Connor, you step in there. Dom, Connor, shit, you step in there. And this is not helping anybody, I don't think, feel like they have the jersey nailed down. And whereas competition is great, competition in that way of, you're not good enough, quick, stick the next guy in, doesn't help anybody. And I just think if we were going to sign someone who was going to be basically a third centre half and playing huge amounts of his game, sort of in some sort of middle area of the park where he's playing simple balls to the side, and then he's doing overlapping runs where Cody Gakpo goes, yeah, fuck you, pal. I'm just going to cut inside and do my shot thing that I do. I feel tremendous sympathy for this guy who was the left back in the team of the year. He's got the chops. He's got them already. Why are we not taking full advantage of that? It makes no sense to me. So again, in a solutions-oriented way, I don't care if it's a transition season, because I didn't want to hear talk about that last year. I didn't want to, because we had a fantastic squad that was good to go, and we had a manager who was a successful, good manager. But this year, you can't change the amount of people that we are changing in the team and looking at doing again in January and again in summer, and not expect there's going to be a few hiccups and bumps. I don't say we write off the big pots, but why can't we win at least one trophy, if not two, with those two new boys in those two positions, which we identified as our weak spots in the team? One, because our generationally talented right back left. The other, because our generationally talented left back had, slowly declined to a point where we can't rely on him. So for me, you go with the two guys. I feel sorry for both, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Lewis, I'll come to you just as we sort of wrap the defense up here a little bit. But I guess the question I'm left with a little bit as well is, we signed these two fullbacks. They profile like they do. We've all spoken about a little bit how we thought perhaps Slot likes one of his fullbacks to be more defensive and the other one to be more aggressive. The strength of these two guys is to be aggressive, let's face it, really. But you can't really have both of them flying up all the time. So I suppose that's an issue to address there. And then the other, I suppose, major point around the defense, and we've not mentioned Joe Gomez because Joe Gomez has not got much of a mention this season, and feel free to talk about that. But we're aware of the creative loss that was happening with Trent departing from the team. Not all teams have their creativity from right back, fair enough, but the onus is on the defense to sort of provide a little bit more creativity to help that build up from the back. The only player who looks as though he's able to do that is Virgil van Dijk, just because of the ability for him to fire passes into midfield or to do the big switches that we've seen for years to Mo. Ibu doesn't look like he can do that. It's not his natural game. Like, fine. Joe Gomez, we have seen do it in the past, that he could fire the ball into midfield anyway. Maybe it's been many years since we actually remember that anymore. And of course, there was the pursuit of one Mark Gehi, who doesn't sign, who one of his biggest strengths is his ability to build from the back. And I come back to thinking about, surely it's not a result of having missed out on that player who we thought, he'll solve that, that particular issue. Because if it was, we surely would have prioritized the signing a bit more aggressively than we did. But just your thoughts on sort of wrapping the defense up there in terms of those questions about, we have these fullbacks, we have the defense, the centre backs that we have. We're asking them to do things that perhaps are not natural to them. What do we need from these players?
I don't know, and that's the worrying thing is there's a lot of these players that we signed, and like Kerkez, Frimpong, Vert, they feel like Jurgen Klopp style players in the sense of like Vert, pressing machine, Kerkez, this creative left back who likes to bomb forward. Of this season, only 5 players in the Premier League have started all 7 matches, and that is Milos Kerkez, Konate, Salah, Van Dijk, and Szoboszlai. Of those players, Milos Kerkez has played the least minutes. Of those 5 players, Milos Kerkez has the lowest progressive carries and the lowest progressive passes. If Konate is producing more progressive carries and more progressive passes than your left back, who you've signed to be a creative outlet, to contribute to Gakpo, to contribute to Ekitike and Isak, there's a problem there. There's a systemic problem. And I don't think Kerkez has been awful. He's had bad matches. I think he's had some good matches. But the biggest impact that a left back has made this season was when Robertson came on against Burnley and he was told, right, put the ball into the box. And he delivered some incredible crosses. That's what Kerkez needs to be doing. People were comparing him to John Arne Riise. And John Arne Riise is my favourite ever Liverpool player. I've said that numerous times. Riise, not for 1 minute would he go inverted and stay back. Any chance he saw space ahead of him, he would go into it and create or have a shot. Kerkez looks like he's being told, right, run to the left-hand side, but there's not a chance that Gakpo is going to pass the ball to you. He's going to cut inside and look for a midfielder. He's wasting that effort when he's going up there, and he's just not getting the opportunity to play the way which benefits him. And the way which benefits him is the way which benefits every other attacker. We've seen that for a near decade with Trent and Robbo. Why he's not being utilised in that way, I don't know. And I don't know if it's some sort of Slot doesn't trust him to do it. I don't know if he just doesn't feel like he has the personnel to do it. But he's not been signed to be this out-and-out defensive-minded left-back. No fullback is nowadays, let's be completely honest. He was signed to be an aggressive attacker, and he's not doing that, much like the rest of the defence. And when Van Dijk is producing more switches and long balls in the team than any other player, there's a real problem there that needs addressing.
Yeah, and I think that's a good angle to it as well, because we all did, we were all involved in some of those transfer committee podcasts in the summer as well. And you can imagine the data sheet that they had on Kerkez, the profile they had on Kerkez when they were looking to sign him from Bournemouth. And I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't have been, he looks quite tidy inverting in the back and sort of passing it to midfield. Like that's not if that's what we wanted. There's probably a dozen other players out there in Europe. One of them who came off the bench against Chelsea, actually, Joro Hato, who probably make a hell of a lot more sense if that's what you're actually trying to do. So it can't be why we signed him. So that, I think that's a real point of confusion to me. Trev, let's now come on to the midfield, and I feel like every single season, no matter what happens, I think it's always the midfield. It's always there's a discussion about what's missing from the midfield. We'll talk about what we added to the midfield this season in terms of we broke the transfer record to sign Germany's best number 10, a generational talent by everybody that you would respect in German football, everybody that you kind of respect in football in general tells you how good Florian Wirtz is. You can watch it with your own eyes in terms of what he did for Leverkusen, again, in a team that was very much geared around him, and getting the best out of him. But let's start with him just because he is such a new addition to this midfield and a different type of player that we've seen Liverpool sign for many, many years in terms of, I suppose, being somebody that we're asking to be an out-and-out number 10. What have you thought of what you expected him to be doing as opposed to what he's actually ended up doing for us?
I spoke to Jan on Mulby on the Spot about my fanciful idea that there was something similar to the signing of Florian and Peter Beardsley back in the day when I was still a young lad. And you both were but fanciful notions in your parents' heads. But I just remember Beardsley struggled a little bit, and he had the price tag, the British transfer record thing. And I thought this is quite similar. And you could see the frustration in him, and he wasn't really grabbing people the way that everyone wanted it to happen. But when it did, it happened brilliantly. And look, Kenny has said it's going to happen. Jurgen's out there saying it's going to happen. These are two great Liverpool men who are going to say positive things, but I think we all believe it's going to happen. And God forgive me, I'm going to use the phrase underlying numbers, but they're good too, right? We've seen the fact that he has created the most chances and all that sort of stuff. Even Nagelsmann getting in on it there during the week, if not, maybe it was today actually. So look, we know what we have in our hands. It's just that we haven't seen it yet. And it's so ironic that his introduction to the midfield and our insistence now on the new style of play where we have him as the fulcrum rather than get the ball to Mo Salah and see what happens, and have really great, energetic guys like the three midfielders that we had in situ last year to do lots of bits around the area. Now we've taken away one of those three, and they were a really important unit, not because one was a 6 and 2 were 8s, because there's no 6 in that 3. There's none. And we asked the guy to do the 6, and people then thought he's the 6 now. No, he's not. And he never was. And they all did a bit of it. Mac did defensive work. Dom does incredible defensive work. Grav does defensive work. But when we'd see Grav do a cutout or an interception or a track back, it was all, oh, look, he's the best number 6 in the league. Because people just want to see narratives that aren't even there. That's just what they do. And it's ironic to me that unit has been disrupted to introduce Wirtz. And because it's been disrupted to introduce Wirtz, Wirtz can't be Wirtz. And I don't understand what's happening there. It's really ironic that we changed that unit to involve him in a way that was probably sold to him over the summer. Arne, with his famous meeting, which went so well apparently, probably said, listen, dude, you're going to be my 10. Everything's going to go through you. We're going to build through you. And I can see this being incredible. And I don't think he's a Billy Big Bollocks. I think he's a humble enough kid. And I think he may well have to accept that there will be a change in his role, because we need Arne Slot to not be maybe as insistent on what he's been doing so far and to tweak it a little bit. And for me, it's really easy. You budge this incredible footballer to the left where he's been at his most creative to allow our midfield to stay together, which was the fulcrum of our success last season. That's a really long-winded way of not talking about Florian Wirtz. I'm sorry, but we can't talk about Florian Wirtz, the player that we know he is, because we haven't really seen it except in little fits and starts. And I feel very frustrated by that. In the same way that I think it's frustrating that we can't see our fullbacks that we bought do their thing. This kid, even though we keep playing the ball to him, it's in positions where he can't do anything with it because there's 17 million lads around him and there's nobody making runs ahead or to the side. So I find it all incredibly frustrating. I'd much rather see him on the ball more in a left advanced position. And I hope that's what happens.
Lewis, what do you think about Florian Wirtz and whether he can play that role on the left in the Premier League? I mean, we've seen it once. I think perhaps, or maybe a couple of times in game where there's been a change. I can't remember whether or not it was against Burnley or someone else where we saw him shift to the left hand side. But he's clearly comfortable in that position. But we saw that against we saw that for Leverkusen. Do you think that? I mean, Trev sort of alluded to his thoughts there. Do you think Florian Wirtz can work as a number 10 in this Liverpool midfield? And it's a question of Alexis McAllister getting over his hernia operation and getting back to full fitness, and Ryan Gravenberch being told, "Look, you're going to have to stay back a little bit more than usual, or actually we're going to play Dom next to Alexis, and we're going to rotate you." I mean, it's very difficult questions to be navigated, but like, do you think there is a composition of that Liverpool midfield where Florian Wirtz can work as a 10, or is it that he may have to shift his position in your opinion?
Well, I'm trying to work out when the last time we played with like an out and out number 10 was it Coutinho? Like, are we talking that kind of era? Like, it's been a long time since we've looked at someone and said, right, number 10, you're the creative midfielder for everyone going forward. It can work, but there's a couple of things. One, you said there, like McAllister, we need him to get over his operation. We need this to fall into place and this to fall into place. There's a concern that we need so many things to be in place for Wirtz to get the best out of him. And I know that's the same with a lot of teams. Like, look at Rodri last season for City, for example. Suarez for us in 2013-14. You rely on big players, but Wirtz is meant to be the player who's come in and made the impact. And it doesn't help when, as the number 10, he's having to come deeper than any other midfielder just to get the ball. Like, he's not being provided the creative spark that he needs to do what he does best. And like Trev said, there's little glimpses of it. There was moments when he first played with Isak against Atletico where you could see the give and go of each other. They worked well together. When he does drift out wide, there's a creative ability to him that's clear for all to see. But you've signed him as a number 10. He's been told that the number 10 role is what he's going to be there to do. But then you're having him come deep. You're having him play as a deep line midfielder at times. You're having him play as a left winger. You're having him play as an attacking midfielder. You're having him drift out to the right at points. It's not beneficial for him that there's no structure around him in place. And that'll come when things start to click and things do gel into place a bit more. But we haven't seen the player that we expect them to be. And, Van Dijk is an example of someone who we as a club do not sign big money players notoriously. We always get ripped into it. You'll hear people who criticize it all the time. This is a unique window for us because we've gone out and we broke the British record transfer fee like twice, or once even, and our record transfer fee twice. There's a lot of expectation on that we are not used to as a fan base. So there is going to be that extra level of scrutiny around Wirtz in terms of what he can do, in terms of what he can deliver, because there's clearly a player there for the club to spend that money on him, but you need to play him in the best position that suits him, in the role that he's been promised, and not chop and change him too much. Don't move him out to the left. Don't move him deep. Don't move him to the right. If you're going to play him as a 10, keep him as the 10 and utilize those other players around him to fill in the void, rather than having to use him as a left winger. Put Ngamoa there rather than having to use him as a deep line midfielder. Bring Jones on if you have there's other solutions to allow him to thrive in the position you've signed him for.
Yeah, so you're of the opinion that you keep him in that position, like we've spoken about with the fullbacks. Really, the roles that you sold these players on, you give them those roles, and you figure out what you need to do around them to allow those players to sort of fulfill those roles. So the fullbacks with their speed, their aggression. If you're going to spend 120 million pounds on a number 10, you should probably
exactly. Makeshift is great at points. I'm happy with a James Milner playing left back over Moreno because Moreno was shit. I get that, but there's a difference between that and bringing in someone for 120 million to play a number 10 and then not playing him properly as a number 10. I don't mind the occasional makeshift. Michael Thomas, I say it all the time, and Eddie rips me for it. Michael Thomas was brilliant because he could play centre back, right back, midfield, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't a permanent solution. Wirtz as a left winger is not a permanent solution. Wirtz as your number 6 is not a permanent solution. The number 10 role is because that's the role that he's been signed to do and the role that suits him. And when it does click, everyone ahead of him, it'll suit them best. So your best thing to do is play him there.
I feel really chastened there, Harry, by listening to Lewis's words, because I was preaching about you signed this kid for left back, play him. You signed this kid for right back, play him. And here's me saying, shunt Wirtz out to the left so we can get him into the team. But I think there's an underlying question there that we do need to address, so people know we're having an honest conversation about this. How, and again, I'll just bet you guys can answer this. How do we make it work then with first? Because patently we have an issue in terms of our defensive solidity in this team, screening, presence in midfield, and all the rest of it. And when we needed the three of the boys at their very best for most of last season, or a good chunk of it at least, to be that sort of unit that covers, how do we take only two from those and make it a situation where, we can function? I don't understand how we can do that, Harry.
Yeah, no, I think I've been of the opinion that, as you mentioned there, the midfield functioned last season because everybody did a little bit of everyone else's job. You had McAllister as a kind of the brains of that midfield in doing the simple stuff effectively, doing it well, always picking the right kind of pass. You could rely upon him to do that. He had a bit of defensive tenacity in him. He had a bit of vision in him. He know when to screen. Wasn't his natural job, and occasionally you'd see the shortcomings of that. The same way with Gravenberg, where he was at peak fitness at the start of the season. We saw that from Gravenberg, but they both relied upon heavily on Dom Szoboszlai doing the work that he does. My personal opinion is that you cannot drop Szoboszlai from this side if you want to have the fullbacks in this team that you have. To have Wirtz as a number 10, you need the sheer work rate and physicality.
Agreed.
To go with the quality on the ball actually as well, but you need that from Szoboszlai. You cannot drop him. I think Alexis McAllister is still probably our best midfielder when fully fit. He is not fully fit, and I think we're clearly trying to get him there. Had a smaller preseason. It's one of the few international breaks where I don't want to see him start against United necessarily, but I'm glad that he's playing like 290s or whatever in South America, because he needs to play as much football as possible to try and get back to that sharpness, to try and get back to that level that we're used to him at. I'm of the opinion that maybe the combination is McAllister, is Szoboszlai, is Jones, is Szoboszlai. And it's weird to say that, because I think we've seen Gravenberg's quality this season and what he can do going forward, what he can do as a ball carrier, just what a great footballer he is as well. But I don't, unless we tell him to really be disciplined and restrain himself in that sense, I don't see how he can play the way in which probably comes naturally to him alongside someone like Wirtz as well, and we don't just get cut through. I mean, Lewis, will move on to Graven, because I guess that's a natural segue. I mean, Gravenberg's probably played how we expected him to play so far this season, a little bit more adventure maybe perhaps than we're used to, but he is what he is. I mean, what have you made of Gravenberg this season, and kind of maybe the role that we need him to play versus the role that he's playing?
I mean, look, Grav, I don't think anyone expected them to get to the level that he did last season. And I think you're right. This season, he's been a lot more adventurous in terms of the way he wants to progress forward. Like, he's in the top 10% of Premier League midfielders for his progressive carries. This season, in terms of compared to other midfielders, he's in the top 14% for take-ons, like actually trying to beat a man. We saw him against Atletico Madrid. We saw him against Newcastle. I like that adventurous side of him, but the issue, and I keep going back to the defensive frailties of others around him, but when he ventures forward, who's picking up the defensive slack for him? Szoboszlai is the only one at the moment, and in games, he's being asked to play right back, further forward. I think Grav's been decent. I don't think he set the world on fire. I think there's certain games where he's played to that top level, particularly early on in the season. And then there's been other games where I've looked at him and just thought, there's something not quite there. He hasn't got the space to work with. At points, he feels very isolated. He's not been able to sort of find the half space for him to turn into. But he's just consistent. And like Trev said before, he'd rather someone who puts in a sort of 7 out of 10 every match. And I'm in complete agreement with that. I think Gravenberch's been to that level so far this season, by average kind of thing. He's still one of our best passes to the ball. He's still defensively sound. But there's just little moments like lapses in judgment defensively in which, if you go back to when we had Fabinho, that was very rarely there. You need that solid spine in midfield. And when Gravenberch's venturing forward, you've got Szoboszlai or McAllister dropping back to defensively cover him. And it just doesn't feel like there's a sort of stable structure for him to build off of. He's not been bad. And I do think that he is one of the more consistent performers. But I'm willing to sacrifice that attacking flair that he showed at points for just a bit more defensive stability from him. Just switch on a little bit more, drop a little bit deeper if you need to, like we saw last season at points. Because at the moment, there's just we're just conceding far too many shots, and it feels so easy for teams to play through us in the middle. That's where Gravenberch's meant to be. That is meant to be his role, is to break up play. He's not a brick shithouse. He's not that style of number 6, but he's just someone who intercepts the ball well. He's great at setting us off on the counter attack. Stop there. Like, I'm fine with that. And he's not been doing that as much as I'd maybe like to see this season.
So we basically need him to take the Ginny pill in terms of sort of like, we all knew kind of what Ginny could do as a footballer, because he'd do it whenever he went on international duty. we don't ask sort of where that was, but he accepted it, right? He sacrificed his natural game to play the game that Jurgen wanted him to play. Yeah, we speaking about number 10s in this podcast, talking about Florian Wirtz. We were never going to ask Florian Wirtz to do what we asked Curtis Jones to do, but Curtis Jones came into the side as a number 10, and we said, yeah, that's not gonna get you into the side. Son. You're gonna have to really become a retention monster and work really hard. And then, sure, if you have the time and space for flair, show us a bit of that flair. But he became a fundamentally different player to sort of get into that side. So, yeah, it does feel as though we're potentially asking some of these players to do the unnatural. Quite a few of them are being asked to do the unnatural at the moment. And I suppose that moves us on to the attack. And actually, I'll just, Trev, I'll come to you quickly on Szoboszlai, because I think, I don't think many of us thought he was going to be a right back at the start of the season, but is it fair to say that whatever we've asked Szoboszlai to do, he's done?
Yeah, and well, and it's kind of skews the conversation a little bit, how effective he's been at right back. But what we have to bear in mind is, and there was a couple of really good examples in recent matches, we have to bear in mind that he is not a right back. And there was a couple of times where a simple ball down the flank, just down the inside, a threaded ball, and Dom's the wrong side of his defender immediately. And that's not anything to do with lack of athleticism, because he's probably fitter than anyone else in the park. It's got nothing to do with lack of determination or fight or strength. It's just nous from playing that position and knowing when to be dialed in, when the ball is moving towards you, where you should be taking the step. That's just practice and training. And so we've been looking at him and thinking, wow, he can progress the ball a bit like Trent. Wow, he's got great determination to get back and get a foot in. But we've got 2 other lads who can do that as well. And we really need him in the middle of the park, especially if it's going to be 2 from the 3 behind Wirtz, which I'm still not convinced is the solution here, by the way, lads. I'm not. Szoboszlai has to be in the team. I agree with you, Harry. I think Lewis is absolutely going to be in concurrence as well here. How can you drop this kid? So he has to be in the team. And if it's a situation where you say, right, you and Grav, or you and Mac, if Mac could ever, I don't know, recover any of the form of last season. I mean, he's a worry, lads. Mac's a worry. And I don't know what it is. And I heard you, Harry, say, well, look, we all knew he was injured, right, on the show. And I was like, No, I didn't really 100% know that. The detail around it seemed sketchy. But we know now he theoretically he's rehabbing a couple of things that's emerged. And, you know, the trip to Argentina can be whatever it is. But I think for the game against the Manx, Grav's injured now as well, right? Grav got a knock.
Came off. Yeah.
He was trying to say it was just a precaution.
Okay.
But I mean, you do have Curtis there. You have I mean, Curtis and Dom is far from a slouchy midfield. I mean,
no. And if you ask them to dial into the defensive side of things and be foot in merchants, they'll do that. They'll cover and they can be disciplined enough to allow Wirtz to do his thing ahead. I just don't know if it's enough, man. I really don't.
Yeah, I think we're obviously going to come back to that because I think again it's so early in the season that we're hoping either players will find form, return to full fitness, patterns of play will become more ingrained, and I think that moves us on nicely to the attack in terms of. Let's start with, I mean, I suppose a particular conundrum. The player we saw, celebrating qualifying for another World Cup with his country this week, courtesy of himself, basically, doing it for him. So glad to see him having those moments. But Mo Salah, we've seen what Mo Salah's done for Liverpool for however many seasons. We kind of know what Mo Salah does. Generally, if you get Mo Salah the ball in the right positions, he does what he's always done: goals, assists, creativity for others. That seems to have been quite different from what we've seen this season, both in terms of how often the ball's getting to Mo Salah, and then when the ball does get to him, what he's been doing with it necessarily. So, I mean, Lewis, I'll come to you on Mo Salah.
Look, I may not know much, but Salah is, for me, is one of the greatest players in Liverpool's history. He's Mount Rushmore. He's the best right winger in Premier League history, in my opinion, which I got slated for on Zach's channel a few months ago, but stand by it. And I think that last season he put in one of the greatest individual campaigns ever. But towards the end, it dipped off. I think he got 2 goals and 1 assist in his last 9 appearances. So this isn't something that's suddenly come up out of nowhere. This is something that's been slowly developing. And there was a multitude of games last season where Salah didn't do a great deal, but he would still get a goal. He'd still get an assist. He'd still get something to contribute to those overlying numbers. This season, like you say, it's not that he's doing anything different in terms of what he's doing to receive the ball. His positioning is fairly similar. He might be a little bit deeper. He might be a little bit wider, but it's what he does with it. And it feels like if he gets the ball, his first instinct is to go inside. Okay, great, that's fine. He does that plentiful. But no one's making those dart and runs in behind for him to get the ball into, like we saw a lot last season. There is no fullback who's overlapping in an effective sense. He just looks creatively stifled. He doesn't look like he's wanting to position himself anywhere near the back line in terms of he doesn't look like he's ready to play off the last man. He's not running into space. He always wants to sort of receive the ball a bit deeper and run with it. And I don't know. I mean, look, I waffle. I'm not going to lie. But maybe it is the Jota situation. Maybe it is the change of personnel around him. Maybe it is the system that he's being asked to play. I'm not sure. But there is a real worry there that Salah, at points, let's face it, he carried us at points last season. He really did at times. He's not there now to do that. We've signed Isak, who's meant to be this goal-scoring machine. We've signed Ekitike to score goals. We've got Cody Gakpo, who we thought was going to carry the left wing. Bar Ekitike, none of the other lads have really stepped up, and there's a major worry that Salah isn't hitting the heights to be able to carry us. He's got 2 goals and 2 assists. One of those was a penalty, I think, and 1 goal and 1 assist came in the first game of the season against Bournemouth. So, he really has dipped off. And he should be one of the first players that you should look to get the best out of him if you want things to really kick back up. Because if Salah's on form, Salah's flying, there's no stopping him. So he should be the first protocol of get him firing and Isak will click. Ekitike will click more than he has. The midfielders will click. So finding a way to get him going is imperative for us this season.
Trev, I'll come to you on Mo, and I'll play devil's advocate a little bit in terms of sort of presenting the other side, the Mo Salah fan accounts online who, will come for you, like just like the Beyonce beehive or Taylor Swift fans. If you criticize Mo, and again, I mean, there's so often no reason to criticize him, but let's say, for example, I mean, last season I remember multiple games that we covered that we were just like, if we just had somebody else up front, Mo would have 10 more assists this season. You think about some of the chances he was putting on a plate for Darwin. And Lucho at times, and so theoretically we've done that in signing Ekitike and Isak, and hopefully eventually you go, oh, those chances that were missed are now being scored. He's spoken a little bit himself as well, obviously, about understanding and having connections between the players that have come in, having to figure out kind of like how they move, sort of how they would like to receive the ball, which takes a bit of time as well. You would have hoped that happened in pre-season, and then I suppose the Jota intangible is something that we can never know, and I think it's clearly something that has deeply impacted all the players as it would. We've seen Mo have pretty uncharacteristic bouts of emotional outpourings this season as well. So it's impossible for us to sort of make that judgment on how profound of an impact that's having on Mo. But the last point I'll say to you is we've signed the players in my head for a post Mo Salah Liverpool, and we're trying to build the plane whilst we fly it, whilst Mo Salah, the captain's, still there. If I'm just in this plane analogy. So is that the troublesome thing? In that we've bought these players to construct a new Liverpool juggernaut, whilst the old guard is still here a little bit. It's a bit janky. I've thrown a bunch of stuff at you there, Trev, but where Mo Salah is, as opposed to kind of where we're used to seeing him, what do you put it down to?
Well, I love the plane analogy, and all I could think of is, and it's gone full Con Air on us, basically. She's come down, lads, and everybody's fucking going in different directions, and nobody knows who's running the show, and it just feels like I think you're right. I think it's actually really good. It's a really good sort of analogy, because we are trying to fly the plane was introducing new parts to it. And it does feel like it's a post-Mo Salah world with Mo still in it. And I think the difference is, you were talking about, we saw him putting things on a plate for different lads last year, Darwin in particular, and we thought, imagine if we could have a lad who would be confident in scoring goals. And we got Hugo Ekitike. And, we don't really have to say a whole lot about him. He's one of those lads like Ali. He's hit the ground running. He's fantastic. I love the kid. Just love him. I love his confidence. I love everything about him. He's great, and his scoring record since he's signed is fantastic. Isak, you have to assume, will be the same. Again, someone who probably doesn't require a whole lot of chat. Cody Gakpo is the only player that Mo has a connection with, and sometimes that's worked wonderfully for us. But they're sort of long shots going from one flank to the other. So we're looking for him to join and connect with the people who are next to him. And we're also trying to do that whilst forcing the play through a different conduit. And I don't think, again, like so many aspects of the team at the moment, that's working, because how can it? And so you have an increasingly frustrated Mo cutting in and shooting when otherwise he might, in other occasions, have passed. Last season we saw so many glorious assists. I think you have to keep in this idea, the theme that's running through this show is persevere. So you persevere with Mo Salah, regardless of whether he's in great form or bad form. You persevere with him. You think, I think, as Lewis said, how do we work out a way to get the ball to his feet more in places where he wants to be? And then things will fall into place, because he will create for Ekitike, who will take chances. He will create for Isak, who will take chances. He will connect with another wonderful world-class football in Florian Wirtz, and that will work. So I think we could be looking at just a sort of ride it out spell here, where the manager needs to work out what he expects from his fullbacks. He needs to emphasize some defensive stuff from them. He needs to settle on a centre half that he's happy with. And if that is Ibu Kanate, he needs to talk to him about how he, first and foremost, his job is to always be dialed in. He needs two defensive midfielders behind Florian Wirtz if he's going to insist on playing with Florian Wirtz as the 10, because that is the plan, trademark. And he's got to get the ball to Mo Salah's feet as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Now, That sounds easy, but even as I'm saying, I don't know what you think, lads, but it's fucking disjointed, isn't it? So I don't understand. I'm not trying to say here I've got the solution, but there are some things that can be done. It seems to me, even as a layman looking on, with these wonderful footballers we have, to coax better performances out of them. I'm not saying I'm thinking about the game in a better way than Arne Slot, but like just on face value, you get the ball more to Mo Salah. You play to the strength that is the wonderful attacking talent of Hugo Ekitike. These things shouldn't be that complicated. And again, last word from me on this. To go back to that team, the team that Kenny built in his first spell as manager, not the team he player managered, but the team he built with those brilliant arrivals, big names, very similar to what we did this summer. They were great players and they clicked. Now, it doesn't always happen like that, but it will happen and you have to trust it. In the meantime, you got to do the basics really well. Don't be free and easy at the back and build from there. I don't know. That's my tuppence worth.
No, I agree.
No, I think there's a lot there. Yeah. And we sort of agreed that Isak and Ekitike don't sort of merit a lot of conversation just because of Hugo turning out to be just this like really, really fun footballer who reminds you of Bobby at times, reminds you of Torres at others. There's some real nice nice stuff there, and you also get that impression that you want to see from your striker, and that this is somebody who enjoys being the guy, right? He likes being the guy. Sometimes too much to the detriment of getting red carded for taking the shot. I mean, he's that guy, and Isak is the same. And so, I think similar to Mac, who we kind of glossed over a little bit. There's a certain few players in the squad who we're just assuming will get back to their level because that's what these players do. And I think that's certainly what I'm hoping with Isak. The last thing I wanted to touch upon is that left wing spot, right? Because I think it's a spot that has had a lot of chat about it. Is Cody Gakpo, of course, Luis Diaz, leaves for Bayern Munich. Diego Jota, of course, untimely passing. Not that he was on the left-hand side, but another forward that we could consider in the rotation. You've got Rio Ingamoa there, who's a kid who we expected to be used as a kid. And then we have Federico Chiesa as well, who finally looks like he may be approaching kind of the fittest he's been in a number of years. And from my perspective anyway, whenever he has played, seems to be all directness and dynamism and a very different profile to what we see from Gakpo. So Lewis, I want to come to you on that left wing position. You could talk about multiple players there. What we lost in Diaz, for all the frustrations with the finishing and the end product at times, we lost the pressing, we lost that tenacity, the defensive work rate that we just, I suppose, took for granted at times. We're asking Cody to do that now, and he's clearly trying to do some of it. But give me your impression on kind of how he's handling it, and should we be rotating that position more than we have been?
Well, for the life of me, like I'll go on stats and I'll look at it and be like, okay, well, he's pouring this, he's pouring this. This backs up this. For the life of me, I can't recall a player who statistically on paper looks like he's putting in a season of his life, but when you watch him, he's just the most frustrating person on the pitch. Cody Gakpo is a skill set that he's not built like a winger. Do you know when you look at him and you just think you're meant to be this man in the box striker? You've got the height, you've got the physicality, the pace. He does not play like a winger, and it frustrates me so much because when Diaz was picking up that ball, we saw what he did to Kyle Walker last season. He would run at people, he would create space, he'd overlap, he'd go inside, he'd cut to others. Gakpo's instinct is get the ball, Kirkes overlaps him, right, I'm going to stop and I'm going to pass it back to the midfield. I don't want to see that from Gakpo. In terms of the Premier League this season, like you're absolutely right on his defensive works. In the top 10% of wingers for blocks, top 13% for shots blocked, 17% for interceptions, shot creating actions. He's making 4.22 a game. Like, he's been creatively good statistically and defensively good statistically, but he doesn't contribute in a way which feels like anyone else around him is getting any kind of benefit. I don't want my winger to stop play all the time and pass the ball back. I think Salah's suffering from that a bit this season as well. And I know that Slot wants them to play that. It's a tactical setup. He wants the game slowed down. He wants to dictate the tempo. He wants to find midfielders running into space. He wants to switch the ball. He wants to drag players out wide. Absolutely get it. But when Rio Ngamoa came on the pitch against Newcastle, he was the best player on that pitch for that period of time, because what he did, got the ball and ran at people. He gave them headaches. He had 2 defenders on him the second he got on that pitch because he was having a go at them. Against Atletico Madrid, that game was crying out for a Rio Ngamoa because there was space to work with, which Gakpo does not exploit. And I do agree there needs to be rotation, because if your player's not in form, like we saw at the start of last season when Quansah was taken off for Canate, that player should be taken out or should be rotated if you've got a viable option behind them. I don't know what Federico Chiesa has done to Slot. I don't know if he's killed his puppy. I don't know if he's stole his wife. I don't know what he's done. Why he can't get a look in perplexes me. He's got 2 goals this season and 2 assists. When he came on last season against Newcastle in the cup final, he got the goal. He scored the match winner against Bournemouth this season. He contributed in the Newcastle game, creating space for Ngamoa to work with. What he has to do to get into this team, I do not know, because against Southampton, he was top level. He is a very direct, versatile player who can cut inside, can run in space in behind, can play as a 9, can play on the right, can play on the left. Utilize that skill set. If Gakpo is not working because defenders have figured out how to mark him out of games, then play Chiesa, someone who's a direct threat on defenders who don't know how to handle him. It frustrates me sometimes. I think only 2 managers in our history have won a league title in their first season, 3 even. Joe Fagan, Kenny Dalglish, and Slot. Slot's got immense pressure, and we love him for it, for the fact that he runs the league. But there's a stubbornness to him at points that it just drives me a little bit up the wall. I want to see Chiesa given an opportunity in a Liverpool shirt because he's warranted it. We've kept him for a reason. I see no reason why he can't break into this team on the left when Gakpo's playing the way he is. Yeah,
and it's beyond the romanticism for me, right? Because I think we all like, a cult hero. We know the fans adore him, and obviously hear the song often enough to sort of understand that. But I suppose maybe the one reluctance I had about Chiesa being involved last season was you could tell he wasn't fully fit, right? He wasn't up to the kind of the level that we might have wanted. So he could do cameos, but what could he do beyond that? I thought against Southampton, you saw, okay, this is as close as he's ever been to being match fit. And I mean, you only get match fit by playing matches. It just seems to me, given the fact that it would be irresponsible to throw Rio in more often from the start because of his age, despite the talent. You've got an option there that's so different from what you've got in Gakpo, who again I think has scored 3 goals on international duty, like 2 assists, man of the match performances. It's Cody on international duty. Yeah, we thought he wasn't in form. Apparently he is, but just not in the Premier League. Again, he scored against Chelsea. So again, to your point, Lewis, on paper, people are probably wondering what we're talking about with Cody Gakpo, because he's a maddening player to watch at times. But Trev, just to wrap things up there and come to yourself on that left wing spot, are you of the same opinion as us in terms of Cody? He's doing more work. He's doing some of the work that Lucho used to do. But if things aren't working for him in an attacking sense, surely we've got to give the boy Federico more of a go.
Well, listen, I'm nothing if not a tremendous hypocrite. And having said that, we should persevere with our left back and persevere with our right back. And Lewis embarrassed me into persevering with our number 10 as Verts, rather than shunting him out.
Didn't mean to.
Dude, you were so right, and I was inconsistent before. I got a chat before my time. Now's my time, and I'm going to say. Yes, now we don't persevere. Now we say you play the man in form. And again, it's one of those things that people are saying. It was one of those things that people feel like they can question Arne Slot about, because it's so painfully obvious that he is a man in form and that he's not just doing it in little bits. And his enthusiasm is so off the scale. And his ability to influence a match and create carnage in the opposition box is so patently clear. that you can't understand why he's not involved more. So yes, that is a simple fix, that you don't have Cody absolutely assured of his place simply because he's a systems man in Arne's head. And he should be in a rotation with the kid and with Cody for that position. Just like Cody found himself to be often when there was more challenging opposition theoretically in Arne Slot's mind there for that left spot. And I think that helps the bigger picture here as well.
Any final thoughts then, guys? I mean, I suppose the theme has been consistency, except when it comes to Cody Gakpo's case. Sorry, Cody. But yeah, like allowing the players that we've signed this summer to play the roles that they were probably sold on playing when they signed for Liverpool Football Club, accepting there's going to be some bumps in the road as players have to get to full fitness, as players have to gel understanding each other's games, but to persevere with them, to persevere with the one of the greatest players of all time in terms of Salah, and rely on him to figure it out with those around him. Any final thoughts, Lewis, Trev, that you wanted to say based on the discussion that we've had going through the squad?
I mean, look, it's not been the start we wanted, but what people need to remember is how fortunate a position we're in, whereby you look at any Liverpool squad, and I use these examples countlessly. Eddie does rip me for this, and I'm sorry, Eddie, you will bully me again. But like, you go back and we had Michael Owen starting, and behind him you had Sean Dundee or Karl-Heinz Riedel. Like, you had Steven Gerrard, and then behind him you had Joe Cole. There's a period of time throughout Liverpool's history where your backup options have not been good enough to lace the first team's boots. We're in a scenario where it's like, Ekitike's not in the team, let's put Isak in. Oh, well, McAllister's not fit, Florian Wirtz, Frimpong, Bradley, Kerkez, Robertson. Like, we're in such a fortunate position. And while people can be downbeat about this season so far and sit there and say it's been poor and negative, by all means we can be. We're constructive criticisers of our team because we're loyal. We love this club. We want to be constructively critical to it, but we want to be optimistic as well. I've never been more optimistic that we can turn stuff around than this season, purely based on the personnel we've got, purely based on the winning mentality that is clearly there, but is just subdued at the moment by the amount of trauma from the summer, the amount of change, the amount of different things that have gone on behind the scenes. But we have the players there to turn this season around. And we're 1 point behind the leaders. We're still in the Champions League. We're still in the Carabao Cup. The FA Cup still to come. There's so much to play for. So downbeat as it can be at points, what a time. If this is considered bad by the standard we've got, I can't wait to see good.
And I think there could be a little tweak we could do just to finish on a sort of different note. What if we do play three from the four guys who formed our midfield quartet last season that rotated between those three positions? What if we do play three, play Wirtz in that 10 withdrawn role? What about if one of our attackers nominally then ahead of him is Mo Salah on one side and Isak or Ekitike on the other side? Why couldn't that work in terms of something that gives us a bit more stability? I'd love to see us, as Lewis has said, both persevere with and start getting the best out of these guys. And again, to echo the thoughts of both of you, I would be optimistic that it will happen. Will it happen in time for us to absolutely be a force in the league campaign this season? Maybe not, but if we manage to hang in, I think it could build and build in the Champions League. So I am optimistic of a big pot this season. I see no reason why. It's almost, do you know when someone says like about somebody, you'd almost have to be concentrating hard to be that bad. And that's how it feels with the way that we're set up at the moment when you consider the players that we have at our disposal. It's almost like an effort to be this disjointed and lack this much flow. So I think it happens, just a matter of when.
Yeah, no, I would, to end on a positive note, yeah, I'd probably agree with both of you that there's too much talent there, there's too much football intelligence there for it not to click at some stage. And I think I'd sort of accepted a while ago that maybe the defense doesn't get like hugely better or where we want it to get to by the end of the season. But maybe the gamble that has been made, similar to kind of what we saw at times with Jurgen, is if I get this attack firing, then I can get us 90% of the way there. And then there's people on this side like Virgil, like Ali, like Ibu, if he could be fully motivated, that can get us near enough where we need to get to. And I think still with the league as well, this is the only squad that knows what it's like to win the title. I think we're seeing fewer and fewer of those players at City now. There aren't any others around, so I'm hoping that some of that muscle memory is useful when we need it as well. So this was always going to be, I think Dan Kennett said, the sort of the period of the season where we were at our most vulnerable. So yeah, I'm already I've bookmarked different posts. I've got things drafted, ready. We need to be ready because I think let them enjoy this, and I think they have done over the international break. But yeah, Trev, Lewis, I want to thank you for having this chat with us. Hopefully, Arne's had this chat weeks ago. And is now very clear on exactly what he's going to be doing, because I think we were all racking our brains about different angles of different questions. But really appreciate you coming on and giving us all your thoughts. And to all the listeners and to the viewers, hope you've enjoyed this racking of brains that us three have gone on today. I'm sure you've been asking yourself similar questions, and let's hope for a bit more clarity and some more fireworks when Liverpool come back from the international break against who better than Manchester United. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening.